Have you ever done something purely out of kindness, not thinking about what it might cost you, only to realize that the very act you were proud of ended up taking everything away? Imagine losing your job, your only income, your stability, all because you helped someone in need. Now imagine that the same act of kindness turned out to be the key to something far greater than you ever dreamed. This is the kind of story that will stay with you long after it ends. And if you believe that small acts of compassion can change the world, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Everyday Grace Stories. Because here, we share moments that remind us what humanity is truly about. Margaret was 60 years old, but anyone who knew her would swear she had the energy of a woman in her 40s. She had been a waitress at Miller's Diner for almost 20 years. She knew the menu by heart. Every side dish, every substitution. She could carry plates stacked high without spilling a drop, and she remembered the little things. That Mr. Peterson liked his coffee with 2 sugars but no cream. That young Emily always asked for an extra cherry on her ice cream sundae. She wasn't just serving food. She was serving comfort. For many regulars, Margaret's smile was as much a part of the diner as the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. Her own life, however, wasn't easy. She lived alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. 10 years ago, she had lost her husband, Robert, to cancer. They had no children, and since his passing, the diner had become her second home, and the customers her second family. Her modest income covered rent and groceries but not much else. Still, Margaret never complained. She believed in showing kindness because she knew what it felt like to desperately need it. It was a bitterly cold Tuesday morning when it happened. The winter wind rattled the diner's windows, and the few customers who had braved the weather were bundled in thick coats. Margaret moved quickly between tables, refilling coffee cups and offering warm smiles. That was when the door creaked open. A man stepped inside, and instantly the air in the diner seemed to shift. His clothes were tattered and layered in mismatched jackets. His beard was thick and unkempt, his hair matted. The soles of his shoes were so worn that his toes peeked through. A faint smell of the street clung to him, the kind of scent that made people wrinkle their noses. Margaret noticed how the other customers glanced at him, some with discomfort, others with indifference. The man hesitated by the door, glancing around as if expecting to be told to leave. Margaret didn't even think about it. She walked over, her voice warm. "Good morning. It's freezing out there. Why don't you come in and have a seat?" He shook his head. I don't have any money." She smiled gently. "Let's not worry about that right now. Sit down. I'll get you something hot." Reluctantly, he slid into a corner booth. Margaret brought him a steaming mug of coffee and a plate piled high with scrambled eggs, bacon and toast. "Eat," she said softly. "Warm up first. We'll talk later." The man's hands trembled as he lifted the fork. He took a bite, then another, eating slowly as though savoring each mouthful. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Margaret just nodded and went back to work. She didn't need to know his story to know he needed kindness. But not everyone saw it that way. From the office doorway, Daniel Miller, the owner of the diner, had been watching. Daniel was a man in his late 40s with a reputation for running things by the book. He prided himself on discipline, structure, and efficiency. And one of his unshakable rules was no free food. He had said it countless times. "We're not a charity. We're a business. If we start giving food away, we'll be out of business." When the rush slowed, Daniel called Margaret into his office. His face was stern, his arms crossed. "Margaret, I saw what you did." She set her notepad down. "If you mean feeding that man." "That's exactly what I mean," he cut in. "We have rules here. No free meals. Ever. It's not personal, it's business." Margaret kept her voice calm. Daniel, he was freezing. He hadn't eaten in days. I couldn't just send him back out into the cold. Daniel shook his head. "You've been here long enough to know the policy. This isn't the first time you've bent the rules. I can't run a place where employees make their own decisions about what's free and what's not." Her stomach dropped. "Daniel, are you saying?" "I'm saying it's time we part ways," he said flatly. The words hit her like a punch. 20 years of service gone in seconds. She walked out of the diner in stunned silence, her apron folded in her hands. Outside, the wind cut through her coat, but the cold in her chest was worse. That night, Margaret sat at her small kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills in front of her. Rent, utilities, groceries. She was too old, she thought, for a new job to come easily. But deep down, she didn't regret what she had done. She would rather lose her job than her humanity. The next morning, she was woken by a knock at her door. She hesitated, wondering who it could be at this hour. When she opened it, her breath caught. Standing there was the man she had fed the day before. But he was transformed. His hair was trimmed, his beard neatly shaped, and he wore a tailored suit. His shoes were polished, his posture confident. The tired, hopeless eyes she had seen yesterday were now sharp and alert. "Margaret?" he asked, smiling. "Yes?" she replied cautiously. "My name is David Harris," he said. "And I think we need to talk." Confused, she invited him in. They sat at her kitchen table, and David began to explain. "Yesterday when I came into the diner, I wasn't really homeless. I was testing something. I recently bought Miller's Diner from Daniel Miller. I didn't tell anyone yet because I wanted to see how the staff treated people, all people, not just paying customers. I disguised myself as homeless to find out who had real compassion." Margaret's eyes widened. You own the diner?" David nodded. "And you were the only one who treated me with kindness. You didn't just feed me, you treated me with dignity. That meant more than you know. And then I heard Daniel fired you for it." She sighed. "Yes. He said I broke the rules." David leaned forward. "Daniel doesn't own it anymore. I do. And if you're willing, I want you back. Not just as a waitress but as the manager. You understand people, Margaret. That's what makes a place thrive. I want the diner to be known for great food and great hearts." Tears welled in her eyes. "Are you serious?" "Completely," he said with a smile. "The job is yours if you want it." When Margaret walked back into the diner the next day, this time as its new manager, she was met with applause from regular customers who had heard the story. David announced the change in ownership and introduced a new, Pay It Forward program. Customers could pre-purchase meals for those in need, and no one would be turned away hungry again. Under Margaret's leadership, the diner transformed. The food was still great, but now there was a warmth in the air that people could feel the moment they walked in. Families, workers, students, and yes, even people struggling to get by all sat under the same roof. In just a few months, business was booming, not because of fancy advertising but because of word of mouth. People came for the pancakes but stayed for the feeling of community. Margaret worked harder than ever, but she did it with joy. She wasn't just serving meals anymore. She was building something that mattered. Sometimes, late at night when she closed the diner, she would think about that moment when she slid the plate of food in front of the man she thought was homeless. She didn't know it then, but it had been the beginning of a new chapter in her life. And she realized something important. Kindness often costs something in the moment. It might even cost you dearly. But in the long run, it has a way of finding its way back to you, sometimes multiplied beyond your wildest dreams. So the next time you're faced with a choice between following the rules and following your heart, think of Margaret. She lost a job but gained a purpose. She gave away one plate of food and received a new life in return. And that's the kind of math kindness always wins.